What drives a 14-year-old boy to attack a 91-year-old woman in her own bed? In a quiet Florida neighborhood where porch lights cast gentle shadows and summer evenings drift by in peaceful solitude, a 91-year-old woman lived alone in her modest home. She was known for her gentle demeanor, her rocking chair conversations, and her kindness to local children, especially a 14-year-old boy she knew as Randy John. June 9, 2024, at 3 a.m., that serenity shattered. A desperate call to 911 would reveal a betrayal so profound it left veteran detectives questioning everything they thought they knew about youth and innocence. "I am in the house," a 91-year-old lady calls in saying she was just raped. The responding officer's body camera captured the disbelief in his voice. "She's beat up really bad. Welcome to True Crime Theater HQ. For more trending true crime like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell, so that when it is released, you don't miss crime stories like this. And don't forget to share them with your friends." Rayok, Florida, a place where June nights stretch long and humid, where cicadas fill the darkness with their endless song. It was here, in the early hours of June 9, 2024, that a 911 dispatcher received a call that would shatter the community's sense of safety forever. At the heart of this story is a 91-year-old woman who had lived in her modest home for decades. Her neighbors knew her as a fixture of their community, the lady who sat in her rocking chair, offering kind words to passers-by. "I've known this lady since I was 10 years old," one neighbor would later tell detectives, his voice breaking. Her daughters wanted her to move so many times. She kept saying, "No." When police arrived at 3 a.m., their body cameras captured the urgency of those first crucial moments. 91-year-old female, beat up really bad, the first officer radioed in, his voice tight with controlled tension. The scene that greeted them was one that would haunt even veteran officers. As law enforcement secured the perimeter, their flashlight beams cutting through the Florida darkness, the magnitude of what they were dealing with began to emerge. "Get some tape," one officer called out. "Major Crimes is coming. K9's coming. A1's coming." The methodical response belied the horror of what they'd found inside. The victim, despite her injuries, provided details that immediately caught investigators' attention. She described an attacker whose voice seemed young, Hispanic, someone who told her to be still as he assaulted her. The attack had lasted 15 to 20 minutes, she told them, her voice trembling but clear. As officers moved through the house, each piece of evidence they discovered painted a more disturbing picture. Blood on the bed, torn clothing, signs of a struggle that told a story no one wanted to read. The crime scene techs worked with grim efficiency, knowing that every fiber, every trace, could lead them to their suspect. But it was what the neighbors said that started to turn the investigation in an unexpected direction. "The only Hispanic that she knows is right across this road," one witness offered, unknowingly providing the first thread that would eventually unravel this case. In the command center set up outside the victim's home, the lead detective reviewed the initial findings with his team. His words would prove prophetic. "Everything she's saying is adding up." But what was adding up pointed to something far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. None of them knew then that the perpetrator they were looking for wasn't some shadowy stranger. He was someone who had sat on the victim's porch, someone who had helped her with household chores, someone everyone knew as Randy John. And he was just 14 years old. As dawn broke over Rayok that June morning, detectives began the painstaking process of piecing together the puzzle. Door by door, neighbor by neighbor, they built a timeline of the previous night's events. The responses they received painted a picture of an ordinary evening turned nightmare. "I was out in my shop working," one resident explained to investigators. "Never heard nobody yell or anything, that's what was weird." Another neighbor mentioned seeing cars from a nearby concert filtering through the streets. Normal sounds, normal sights. Until they weren't. But it was a seemingly casual conversation with the victim that provided investigators their first real lead. Hours before the attack, she'd had a visitor, a young boy she'd known for years, someone who called himself Randy John. She described their interaction as ordinary, just another friendly exchange on her front porch, the kind of moment that had played out countless times before. At the very last second, her mother clasped her daughter's hands in hers, and as detectives expanded their canvas, they encountered a 14-year-old boy in the neighborhood. Jesse Stone appeared cooperative, calm even, as he spoke with investigators. But something caught their eye, a reddish stain on his clothing. In that moment, years of investigative instinct told them this was more than a coincidence. "We'd like to collect a DNA sample," they told Jesse's grandmother, explaining it was routine, just to rule him out. She agreed, watching as they swabbed her grandson's cheek. Neither she nor Jesse showed any signs of concern. Why would they? After all, Jesse was just a kid from the neighborhood. For 8 days, life in Rayek attempted to return to normal. Police increased patrols. Neighbors checked their locks twice. The victim began her slow recovery, surrounded by family who'd begged her for years to move somewhere safer. Then the lab results arrived. The DNA found on the victim matched Jesse Stone, the same boy who helped neighbors with chores, the same teenager who walked their streets at night, supposedly watching modified cars from the concert. The same child who sat in his grandmother's house, going about his daily routine while investigators built their case. The evidence was undeniable. The attacker wasn't a stranger passing through their community. He wasn't some shadowy figure from the concert crowd. He was a boy they all knew, hidden in plain sight. When detectives prepared to make their arrest, they knew this wasn't going to be like any other case. How do you tell a grandmother that her 14-year-old grandson, the child she was raising, was capable of such violence? How do you process the fact that the monster parents warned their children about was, himself, still a child? The answers would come in an interrogation room, where a family's world was about to shatter and a community's trust would be forever changed. The interrogation room at the Rayek Police Department held 2 chairs, a table, and 14 years of secrets about to unravel. Jesse Stone sat quietly, wrapped in a blanket against the cold air conditioning, waiting for over 2 hours as detectives prepared their strategy. When his grandmother arrived, the atmosphere shifted. She was there as his guardian, his protector. Unaware, she was about to witness the dismantling of everything she thought she knew about the boy she was raising. "Do you understand the difference between truth and lie?" the detective began, his voice carefully neutral. Jesse's response was clear, rehearsed. "The truth is what actually happened. A lie is something made up." Those words would hang heavy in the air as the interview progressed. The detective started slowly, building rapport, discussing Jesse's nighttime walks, his claimed interest in modified cars from the concert. But then came the moment that changed everything. The DNA evidence reveal. "Your DNA was on her underwear, Randy John. What do you have to say about that?" Jesse's response was immediate denial. "That's impossible." But the color drained from his grandmother's face as she processed what she was hearing. The detectives then laid out photographs, the victim's injuries, her bruised face, the evidence of violence that couldn't be explained away. His grandmother's voice cracked with emotion. "Randy John, if you care about her, tell the truth. We've been down this road before, where you've been lying about something." Her words carried the weight of previous deceptions, small lies that now seemed like warning signs. The detectives shifted their approach, discussing Jesse's internet history, his interest in pornography, information provided by his grandmother. They worked to normalize his curiosity while building toward the crucial question. Had that curiosity led to violence? "Is Randy John the kind of guy that breaks into people's houses with axes?" the detective asked. "Or did Randy John just make a mistake? Did he go into a house and expect this 91-year-old woman to be sleeping?" Through tears, Jesse's grandmother made one final plea. I hope and pray you did not do this to this woman. This is horrific. This is a human being and she deserves justice. The weight of evidence, his grandmother's anguish, and the detective's strategic pressure finally cracked the facade. Jesse Stone, the boy known as Randy John, began to confess. He spoke of watching pornography on the victim's iPad, of entering her room, of moments that would forever change multiple lives. I don't intend to hurt anyone, he whispered. But the damage was already done. His grandmother sat silent, tears streaming down her face, as the boy she thought she knew revealed himself to be someone else entirely. In December 2024, 6 months after that violent June night, Jesse Stone stood before a Florida judge, no longer the confused teenager in the interrogation room, but a 15-year-old facing adult consequences for adult crimes. His guilty plea echoed through a courtroom filled with people still struggling to comprehend how someone so young could commit an act so brutal. For the residents of Rake, the case left wounds that may never fully heal. Neighbors who once welcomed children into their homes now look at young faces with uncertainty. The victim's family finally convinced her to leave the home she'd refused to abandon for so many years. The porch where she once rocked and chatted with passers-by stands empty, a silent reminder of trust betrayed. Jesse's grandmother no longer walks the streets of their neighborhood. The whispers follow her family now, carrying questions no one dares ask aloud. How did they miss the signs? Could they have prevented this? The weight of these questions has driven many families from their homes, unable to reconcile the memory of the helpful boy they knew with the reality of what he became. As Jesse awaits sentencing next month, the community grapples with a harsh truth. Sometimes, the most devastating crimes aren't committed by hardened criminals or mysterious strangers, but by those we least suspect. A 14-year-old boy, a trusted neighbor, a child who helped with household chores and stopped to chat on summer evening. The case files in the Rake Police Department tell a story that will haunt investigators for years to come. Not because of its brutality, though that was exceptional, but because it challenged everything they thought they knew about youth, innocence, and the capacity for violence. In the end, the Randy John case isn't just about a crime that shocked a community. It's about the shattering of innocence, not just of a victim, but of an entire community's belief in the safety of their own neighborhood. It's about the thin line between trust and terror, and how quickly that line can blur in the darkness of a Florida night. If you've enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more gripping tales like this.